All right, welcome back to the Fab Forums. This episode, we finish this thing. I hope. This episode of the Fab Forums is brought to you by Kill Fab Clothing Company. Find killer clothing over at killfab.com. So at this point in the build, I've basically figured out everything I need to replace. I've kind of found the new things, right, that I didn't account for in the beginning. I've ordered those. Most of those are here. Started putting this thing back together, and I think it's gonna go pretty quick, but you know, you can't never tell. You can't ever tell. So I've been working on the gauge cluster, painting those needles, getting that stuff all sorted out, replacing the little pieces that need to be replaced. I think the temperature gauge needed to be replaced, and then the gear selector needed to be replaced. So those are now replaced. Currently waiting on putting the cluster back in because I'm working on the column right now. So the tilt column itself had some play in there, and from a little bit of the research I've done and talking to some of my buddies, that's pretty normal in these things. They've got 4 bolts in there that kind of work loose. The problem is it's really hard to get in there to tighten those up. Some people just, I guess at some point you can get in there enough to maybe tighten 2 of them. I think that's what most people do. I really want to do it the right way. And so I've taken this thing all the way down, pulled those bolts out, put a little bit of Loctite on there, put them back in, make sure those things never come loose again, and started putting the column piece back together. Now, it was a little more than I expected it to be. Ran into a couple little issues, but yeah. I mean, I think at one point I was like considering just buying a whole new column. I was like, screw this thing. There were a couple specialty tools that I had to borrow. One was a piece that basically puts tension on that spring so you can take out a little C-clip. And then once you kind of get that off and you get working in there, in order to get this thing apart enough to fix that wobble in the tilt steering, you have to take out the pins, the tilt pins, the pins that it actually actuates on. Those have to come out, and there's a special tool they make that basically screws in those and then pulls them out. So other than those 2 tools, wasn't terribly bad. So that's those pins there. And so there's this little tool that screws right in the side of those, and then it kind of just pulls them out. So yeah, everything's good. I mean, the column goes up and down right now because I've taken the support braces out just to get the wires out, but the actual tilt head doesn't shake anymore like it used to. This truck had factory cruise control, so I just disconnected it out here, the speedometer out here. It actually made it easier to pull that cluster out. All right, update. So let me show you what I got done. Carpet sitting in here. Got all the trim on the doors up here as well. So this is all new. Trim, doors are done. The inside of the doors are done. You seen that in the last video. New poles, new actuator, new handles, new mirrors. So all that stuff's done. And then I had the gauge cluster out. Had to replace this gauge here. The old needle was broke off on the water temp, and replaced the gear selector piece because that was also broke. And then what I did was I painted all of the needles on the old gauges, and then I painted the ones on the new gauges as well, just to make everything match. And you can kind of see, looks nice and fresh. All new rubber on the pedals. Got the headliner kind of stuck in there for right now. Still got to mount everything. Let me show you what I ended up doing on the cluster. I mean, on the column itself too. So this gauge selector has a wire that comes over, goes around this little plastic piece, and then ties back into this part of the column. So as you kind of, put that thing in gear, it moves that bottom section, which moves the selector. So the problem I was running into is that mine was really brittle and it had broke. So all this piece right here had broke away. And in order to replace that, you literally have to take the whole column out. And I looked at those pieces. I mean, other than this being broke, it wasn't a bad piece. Like, it's not all scratched up or banged up. So what I ended up doing, put some tape behind here, coated that thing in epoxy. And then what I did was I just kind of lined that up, drilled the hole, pushed it back on there, put the screw in it, and she's good to go. The only reason I hadn't put it totally back together is because this clear piece that goes over the gauges, you can see it's got some yellowing on it. And the gauges look nice and clean, but man, when you put this thing on there, it really kills the vibe of nice fresh gauges. So I priced them, they're 50 bucks, 50 or $60, maybe they're $59. This one's actually in really good shape except for the yellowing. So I think what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna try to cut and buff it. And that's why that hadn't gone back on yet. There's that needle paint that I used there. Worked out pretty good. I actually just took some paper and like cut slits in it and then slid that around the needles and then just painted it with this needle paint. It's awfully bright, but when they're all bright like that, it doesn't, look like it's odd. All right, so clips are on. I had to dig this foam out just a little bit and then put the insert on the front. Vents are in, and then what I did too is I actually had to kind of grind out this foam just a little bit around these vents just because the studs weren't quite long enough. And then what I did just to make sure that everything stays, put a little plastic 2-part epoxy over each nut itself. If I ever need to get them off, you can peel that stuff off, but it'll just kind of help them hold a little bit better over the long haul. The only thing I got left to do is put the emblem back in there. I may wait to do that. I didn't buy a new one. I've got the old one still. I'm thinking about just taking like some model paint and see if I can't clean that thing up and paint it before it goes back in. Started putting the new belts in. So all new belts. One of the problems though is that it wasn't an exact replacement. Didn't match up exactly, so I ended up having to cut the bracket off the old one. See if you can see this. So the way that this one mounts, it's just got a bolt that kind of goes, you know, through here. There was no L bracket. It actually, they sent an L bracket with it, but it was like centered, and the bolt mounting hole for the factory one is kind of back, and so I just ended up cutting the factory flange off of the old ones and then welded a bolt through it so it bolts on. And then the good thing is that it still has some of the mounting points to rivet this cover back on. So once I'm ready, I can kind of push this thing down and put the rivets in here, get that thing mounted the way it should be. So there's that. The headliner's just still hanging in there. Haven't finished that yet. I'm gonna kind of wait. Gotta put the bezels in. Started cleaning those things up. So you can see, I mean, this one has already been scuffed a little bit, but you can tell that it's still kind of dingy. And this one's a little bit cleaner. Right now is when I wish I had a media blaster. Could just media blast these things and then put a little brush in it and be done. So the idea is that I'm gonna clean it up as best I can and then clear it with some shark hide and then slide that thing back in the truck the way that it is. I think I may have shown you a door panel as well. Kind of waiting to do those until the last. I don't want to be in and out of the truck and then mess up one of these door panels, but got the passenger side, actually this is the driver's side one ready. It's ready to go in. Just needs to go in. So under the hood, I wanted to paint the firewall again. Got that. Used one of my tricks that I've mentioned before on the channel, just using some old towels. So you can kind of drape these wherever you need to. Just kind of masked off what I needed to mask. Oh man, I'll have to clean that up. That is one of the downfalls with the towels is if you miss a spot, then it's gonna get through. But for everything else, it kind of works pretty good. So yeah, I'll take all that off. All this has been painted and cleared. New inner fender well, got a new battery tray. All that's got to go in, but I'm waiting for the fenders. All right, let's do a recap on the truck thus far. I said I was gonna finish it in the next video. I wanted to make this a 3-video build. Not quite done, but we're gonna end it here. And I'm sure you'll see more on this truck later on. I mean, really all it needs is the bed and the hood put back on. So the grill turned out phenomenal. Everything looks really good. Very nice color, very nice fit, everything. I'm very happy with it. Very, very happy with it. These are the original plates here. This is all new, so the chrome actually matched pretty good. This stuff right here wasn't too worn, and really the old stuff wasn't too bad. It just had like nicks and dents in it, and so I wanted to get rid of that. And then the grill is like 10 times better. The gold color, the chrome, everything just looks really, really nice. And then didn't do much under the hood. Obviously, you've seen the brake booster, coated that, got all that cleaned up, painted the firewall. The only thing I don't like is if you look really close, I shouldn't really point this out, but the colors don't really match from there to there. So you can kind of see the difference, which I'm a little bit disappointed about. It's a little bit more burgundy than red, but the thing is once the hood's on, you won't see, it'll kind of break up the two colors, and once the two colors aren't next to each other, you won't be able to notice. So new breather, painted this. I saved all the decals. So all the decals I basically taped off and left them original. I kind of want this truck to have that original feel to it. I plan on actually painting the engine block at some point. I'll kind of strip off as much as I can and paint that back original. But yeah, cleaned up some of these lines. I wanted to have that original feel to it. I did though. I kind of hid the electrical on this thing. So this cable used to run, and I've actually still got to get some clips for this. This cable used to run over this here, and I relocated it underneath this shroud. I think it looks better. One of the clips actually just pokes up from the bottom. So once I get the new clips, everything will be nice and clean. Still plan to kind of clean all of the stuff that's cleanable. So like this will all be cleaned, and then I'll kind of gloss it up so it looks nice and fresh. Also redid the wires. So these wires kind of look janky, kind of cleaned them up the best I could. And as you've seen, new inner fender, a little bit of paint on this just to kind of clean it up. I'm gonna put the jack and stuff back in there. I still have it. The plans are to paint everything. So I've got this painted. Gonna paint the tire tools and stuff. And then all that stuff's gonna mount back in here where it's supposed to go, right inside of this inner fender well. So got that. New battery tray. This thing's nicely secure. Not like it was, nice and fresh. So I'm pretty happy so far with under the hood. So, I mean, as some of you, I'm sure most might have done in the past or on projects, is you spend a bunch of money and then you wonder where that money goes when you're done. This project is kind of like that because you don't really see a whole lot of a change, right? It's like you didn't drop it on the ground. You didn't put big wheels and tires on it. You didn't put a lift kit on it. No airbags, nothing. So the amount of money that was spent on this project, where did it go? You don't really notice it. Everything just looks like it's supposed to, which that's the point. So most of the spend on this project was on the interior. The interior was the roughest of this project. So the outside was pretty good. The interior was what needed some help. And so new carpet, new pedal rubber. So all this is nice and fresh and clean. New horn button, new dash. So all this is new. Cleaned up all the vents, painted those. New mirror, new rear view mirror. New headliner. So the old headliner was sagging. All this is new. And then I went ahead and put a new light in here with an LED, so it's nice and bright. And then replaced the belts. So all new seat belts in this thing. And as you've seen, I had to kind of modify how the brackets mounted. What else? New door panels. So a door panel looks simple. It's like, looks like one continuous piece, but it's not. There's a lot that goes into door panel. You got the door panel itself, and then you got like this piece, and you got that piece, and you got the centerpiece, and the handle, and the bezel, and then the inner bezel, and then you got the outer bezel, and then you have the lock switch, and then you have the window switches, and this piece, and the padding, and there's a lot that goes into that. So you have to buy each one of those pieces individually. I basically replaced everything except for this piece and that piece. These were broke off initially, so I had to replace those. All new switches. The old switches worked, but they weren't as clean as I wanted them to be, so I bought new switches. Same thing with the handles. The handles worked, but they weren't nice and clean, so I bought all new handles, bezels. Yeah, all new stuff, new padding. And the nice thing is that this stuff comes in a shade of red that actually matches the dash perfect. So because it's got a new dash in it, you know, it kind of works out that this stuff matches. And then there's a lot of that stuff that you'll never see, just because, and that's like the weather stripping. Like, so this door weather stripping needed to be replaced. The inner door weather stripping needed to be replaced. So all this stuff is all brand new. And it just gives it the door that nice clean shut, like that nice seal when you shut it. Actually, it's a little bit too hard right now, but as that stuff starts to give, it'll be perfect. And then like striker bolts. So new striker bolts, new door hinges. So all the hinges are new. Actually, I had to paint those just to kind of camouflage them a little bit. I didn't want like a shininess coming through the cab. Jam. Yep, see what I mean? There it goes. The other thing is, so got all the gaps nice and clean. Everything's the way it's supposed to be. Nice, good door gap. Nice fender gaps. Everything is pretty good. New mirrors. New handles. New trim piece. You guys seen that? So the one thing I did do is I removed the badges here. Initially, I wasn't going to do it. I was going to paint the badges. I'll kind of show you. Let's see. What did I do with those things? I think I put them over here in the office space, the lounge space, as a decor for now. So you can see those. They don't look terrible, and you may not even be able to see them that well in here because it's so dark, but I was going to paint them. I was going to paint the inside silver and, you know, just, or gold. But decided against it. I mean, when you put this amount of work in something, you might as well just, you know, follow through to the end, get it done. So, see here what I got. She's waiting. She's ready. All right, so got move this one's already open. Yes, see, that's what I'm talking about. See, the gold is nice and clean and fresh. The chrome still has some bling to it. Like this kind of stuff is what's really going to make this truck pop. So I'll have to actually do it the proper way, but I mean, how often do you roll up to a C10 and it's got brand new emblems? I mean, whether it's been painted or not, doesn't matter. When you see these brand new emblems, it's going to look super fresh. The only reason I haven't put these on yet is I'm kind of waiting. I think what I'm going to do is, because I've been kind of painting stuff in here and just, you know, whatever, working, I'm going to get the entire truck back together, and then I'm going to clay bar the whole thing and get it nice and clean and detailed. And then I think I'm going to ceramic coat it, and then I'll pop these on once all that's done. Be kind of the finishing touches. Going along on the lines of things that are replaced that you won't see. The whole cab itself, all the body mounts for the cab, all the rubber body mounts for the cab have been replaced. So that thing sits level like it should now. And then what I did is I also did the same thing with the core support. So this core support sits on rubber, and I went ahead and replaced those so it'll kind of match the cab. And I guess my thought process was, I don't want to realign the doors and the fenders and all this stuff when the cab's all crooked or jacked up. I want to do all that stuff and then align the doors and then align the fenders, and so it's all right. So tanks are painted. Everything's ready to go. When the bed goes back on this thing and you look through that little seam in there, you won't see, you know, rawness like you saw before. It's gonna be nice and clean and painted, and I think it's gonna make a huge difference. So the bed's gonna go back on. I was hoping to do it tonight, just didn't have the help that I needed to do it. It's gonna take more than just me. And then the bumper will go on, which is really not that big of a deal. It's a pretty easy setup. You can see I got the bumper waiting. So that's got to go back on. And the hood, which is kind of the same deal. It's like the bumper, you just got to put it on and bolt it up. But the seat I haven't quite figured out what I want to do yet. So as you can see, it's not in the greatest shape. It definitely won't match what I've already got going on in the truck now. And where I'm torn is, initially I thought this was the original seat covering. And so when I would go online and look at new coverings for these seats, I couldn't find anything that looked like this, that had like these pieces and the way that it was sewn. And I didn't want to buy something that wasn't original. But the closer I looked at this and the more research I did, I'm beginning to think that this is not original. I'm beginning to think that maybe my grandma had maybe recovered these seats at some point. She did upholstery work. She had all the equipment to do upholstery work. And so there's a good chance that she redid these, and I actually haven't asked her. I need to, but it doesn't really matter. Where I'm torn is whether I actually hire somebody locally, like an upholsterist, to redo these seats, or buy the ones that are available online that you can basically just stretch over. You take these off and you stretch the new ones over it, and you kind of fasten them in. To buy them online, they're like $300, and then you have to actually put them on yourself. The thing is, they're most likely going to be true to the original design, versus I can take them to an upholster. It's going to cost me more. It's probably going to cost, if I had to guess, around the $500 range. And then you don't really know what you're going to get. You can tell them you want it to be really original. You can take them pictures, but you know, unless they're like in the C10 game, they're not going to really know exactly what needs to happen. So I don't know. The other thing is, where I live, I don't have a huge assortment of people who do upholstery work, so I'm kind of stuck with what I've got available. And then I think the last thing I'm going to do is I'm actually going to pop these beauty rings off, repaint the wheels, give them a nice clean coat of silver, and then put these on or order some more beauty rings. The rings themselves are pretty rough, and they could, if it had some nice clean rings, it'd be tight. So maybe that'll happen. And then on the inside, just a few little touches need to be done. I mean, besides the seat, but. So this has a protective cover still on it that I have to peel off. But this Silverado emblem actually goes in there. And you can see that it's not really up to par. So may take some like model paint and paint that thing up the best I can. Make it look pretty clean and then pop it back in there. All right, guys, there you go. Grandma's C10 back in all its glory very, very soon. It's looking killer. So not really my normal kind of video, kind of out of my element as far as like just putting parts on versus like fabricating stuff, but hope you guys enjoyed these 3 videos in this episode. And hot and heavy on this thing. Lots of fuel system parts. Already kind of ripped all the interior out. Cooling's going in. Lots of stuff. I've got lots of stuff lined up for this. Work on the exhaust. I'd kind of post some stuff on Instagram about the exhaust. So it's just going to dump right out of the turbo up. And then I think what I've decided is I'm going to do like a little, yeah, well, you just have to watch. Lots of stuff coming on this thing. I've basically ordered everything I need. Gonna go hot and heavy on it. Hopefully this kind of virus thing goes away, and then we got some shows coming up. Gonna try to knock those out. May even see this thing in SEMA or PRI this year if it happens. So anyway, as always, thank you for joining me. I'll see you guys, well, soon. Y'all go do work, son.